When we are installing a new custom car audio system into a vehicle with aftermarket speakers and aftermarket amplifiers, we oftentimes want to run new, larger speaker wire into the doors. Now back in the day, this was easy. There would be a huge rubber boot between the body of the vehicle and the door. It was completely open. It just might have a few small wires in it. You could drive a train through the thing. Running speaker wire into it was no problem. But today, in newer vehicles, unfortunately, the story is a little different. Car manufacturers nowadays like to use a plug like this that blocks your path from just simply putting the wire through. Unless you know how to do this modification that I'm going to show you guys in this video. Now real quick, before I show you guys the modification, I do want to say a thank you to our monthly channel sponsor, Crutchfield. When we are choosing car audio gear for our install, Crutchfield makes the process easy with their vehicle selector tool. We can simply choose our year, our make, and our model of our vehicle, and Crutchfield has done extensive research to determine exactly what will fit in our vehicle. Let's take a look at some door speakers. We can pick the speaker location and narrow down by brand and size and other features, and better yet, Crutchfield will include installation gear with qualifying purchases. As an example, for lower power systems where we don't need to upgrade the wiring, we can use the factory speaker wiring and adapt to the existing stock speaker wire harness with this adapter included when I purchase these qualifying speakers. To see what fits your vehicle and get a special offer for Car Audio Fabrication fans, you can visit the link here on screen or down in the video description. So here we are at our problem area. We need to somehow run our speaker wire through from the inside of the vehicle into the door. We have to go through this boot here, but this isn't any ordinary boot. It doesn't just have a hole going through it. Right here, we actually have a Molex plug that you guys will see soon. Now, a few disclaimers: making this modification for running the speaker wire through this probably voids the warranty. There is a potential for big issues where you would have to completely replace everything if you screw this up. So this is completely at your own risk. I'm only showing you how I'm doing this, in my opinion, in this particular vehicle. Standard install procedures apply. I've disconnected the ground of the vehicle. The parking brake is on. Everything is good to go. As far as preparing our speaker wire goes, you want the speaker wire that is made side by side. Now, if you're using a speaker wire that has a round jacket on it like this, that's no big deal. We can just simply strip it away like I've done here, and I've stripped away a fair amount so that I have more than enough once I get into the door. So the next thing I need to do here is I need to pop this rubber grommet away from each side. I find doing this is a lot easier when you have a good set of plastic pry tools. It's easy to pop the boot out from inside the door itself, and a little bit more challenging to get this one off because it's usually around a flange like you can see right there. And the reason you want to do this is it makes your life a lot easier to see where the tabs are to release this. There's actually one right here I can kind of push down, and one on the back. And then there's probably one on the bottom too. I know you guys can't see it on camera. Sorry about that. Doing my best to capture this. But you just want to go around and push each of those tabs down until this pops out. Eventually, once you get all those tabs released, you should be able to pull the harness into this gap here, giving yourself a little bit more room to work with. Now the next step is we want to actually disconnect this harness. And I've found that car manufacturers, they just love to over-engineer this thing. So on this particular one, what you want to look for, see this little lever guy right here? You want to look for a little lever. You push that in, and then this whole clip pops up like that. And you want to pull it all the way up. And once you've done that, reach inside the vehicle here. You should be able to disconnect it. There we go. Disconnected. If you've gotten this far where you've disconnected the two, congratulations, because this was the hardest part. So next we need to actually make the modification to our harness here to run the wires through. So you want to feed this back inside the vehicle. That way we have easier access to it. What you want to look for is unused pin locations. So when the car manufacturers pick these harnesses, they use them in multiple different vehicles. That way they can make more of them, more common parts, which is cheaper for them to make, which means that there'll usually be leftover holes. Or if there's other options from the factory that you didn't purchase on the vehicle, there'll be extra holes for those as well. I find that 9 times out of 10, you have extra holes. What you want to do is you want to find 2 holes for our 2 wires to go through, and you want them to be towards the outside. I wouldn't pick necessarily in here between these 2 green wires. I think that these 2 here are optimal because they're all the way to the outside. Now here is where the modification comes into play. And again, I'll issue this disclaimer that this is at your own risk. This could void the warranty. I'm just showing you my opinion on how I do this. And if you screw this up, it could mean major issues having to replace this whole wire harness. So be careful. And you want to double check the wires should fit in to the slot a little bit. It's just not going to be able to push all the way through quite yet. That's because there's that little pin retainer to actually hold the pins in for these wires. So we're going to go ahead and drill that out. Like that. Do the other one. So now we can take our wire and we can push it through, make sure it comes through. Double check, it should slide freely. If it doesn't slide freely, you want to drill out a little bit more material because you don't want a chance that that tab actually tears through or cuts the insulation on your wire. Now on this wire, since I have this little bit of extra insulation around the 2, I want to leave a little bit of extra here.
A quick side note here while I'm editing, if a body shop or mechanic ever needs to remove the door, doing this modification will prevent them from simply disconnecting the plug, as these wires will be a constant run, so they will likely just cut the wires. Leaving some extra wire is a great idea so we can reconnect them if need be.
Now the next step is we have to determine which of the 2 correspond to what we drilled on this harness here. So if we line it up like so, I know that it's going to be these 2 holes here. So now I will drill these out too. Now obviously the next step is we want to take the wires and we want to feed them through those new 2 holes, but this is extremely important. You want to make sure that you go through and you separate your wires. If they're twisted multiple times and you put this through, what that means, since there's 2 wires, is you're gonna have to twist the harness to get it back lined up. We wanna avoid that, so what I recommend is that you do 1 at a time. So we know that this is completely untwisted. We're gonna feed it through the door jamb here. So we're through the door jamb, and then I wanna go through my corresponding hole. Again, make sure that we have nice free movement. So notice I haven't put it through the boot yet. I'm just going to leave the wire here for now. So next, again, making sure that we don't get twisted up, I'm going to come through the door jamb, and we will go through our harness. Now this time I stopped before I put that wire through the harness because I do want to make sure, again, that they don't have a twisted orientation. Another thing that's nice here is if this was kind of hard to fish back through, I can pull on the wires that I've already pulled through in order to fish the plug back into the gap here between the door and the body. All right, so I've got these lined up. I'm absolutely sure that there's no twist. I'm going to push through my second wire. To get the wire harnesses to join back up, I need to carefully pull the wire, pull the slack out of the way as I go to plug these together. And you should be able to check like this and see that you have a nice movement through the harness. That means that it's not bound up inside there. Everything is good to go. So now I can put that clip back in place and that plug is looking good. Now we're not into the door quite yet though. We need to get these wires through that rubber boot. So what you want to do is take a nice stiff zip tie like this one. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to poke the end through. Now I've seen other videos online where people will use a screwdriver for this. I definitely recommend against that. The reason being a screwdriver is made of metal and you have potential to hurt these valuable and sensitive wires. You don't want to do that. So we want to use this nice plastic zip tie because it's plastic. It's not going to be as likely to harm those wires. So I've got it fished through there. Now what I can do is take these wires, take some cheap electrical tape, wrap it around a couple of times, and then secure it around the zip tie. So now, as you probably guessed, we take the zip tie and carefully feed our wires through. You kind of want to work the boot. If it seems too hard to pull, kind of wiggle the boot a little bit. And just like that, we now have our wires through the boot. Now it's just a matter of putting this boot back in. And before we plug the harness in, while it's still free like this, you want to cover it back up with the rubber, because once you click that back into place, there's no way you're getting this rubber back on. So there we have it. Our boot is back in place, and now we have our nice aftermarket speaker wire that is more than substantially sized for our new aftermarket speaker. Now, I know one of the questions that many of you out there probably have is, why not just repin the harness? To repin the harness would mean you would find the exact pins and the exact crimping tool that the manufacturer uses in order to actually add those pins to that harness. That way you could unplug and plug it back in just like the OEM. I've tried this in the past, and the problem I've had is, one, it's very difficult to find the exact pins and crimping tool that the manufacturer used that will fit perfectly within that stock harness. Secondly, those pins are made for a very small wire size. They don't crimp correctly onto a larger wire size, so it almost kind of defeats the purpose of even using the larger wire. This is just one of those things where you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. If you're really concerned that a mechanic is no longer going to be able to just simply disconnect the door from the vehicle if they're working on it, then you know what? Just don't do this modification. The fact is, for many aftermarket car audio systems, the OEM wire size for the speakers is more than substantial. But when you are installing speakers that require substantial power, it is beneficial to have the larger wire size. Don't forget, next time you are upgrading your car audio system, you can see what fits your car and get a special offer for car audio fabrication fans here at this link on screen or down in the video description. A special thanks to Crutchfield for being a monthly channel sponsor, along with Lonnie, Ali, William, Marcos, Michael, Steve, Emmanuel, Jerry, and the rest of the Patreon membership team. A big thanks to all those guys for making these videos possible. As always, my friends, thank you guys for watching.